The first thing I think of isn't the rubber tires or cars or factories. It's the trees, and they will always be my lasting impression of it. The first one I saw was the cherry tree. It was expecting me. Trees have personalities, subtle, but a baby can tell. The house on Hillcrest Street stood on the crest of a hill paved with red bricks. When a car drove up, it made a distinctive sound like a Spaniard rolling his R's. I loved that sound. I loved the house painted blue, the color of choice for an Akron house, with its covered porch you could sit on when it rained. And I loved the pond in Uncle Harry's backyard next door. But mostly, I loved the cherry tree. Melville and Dolores, Bud and Dee, Mr. and Mrs. M.G. Hynde, Akron, Ohio, Rubber City, Tire Town. Those were the different names of my 3 parents. Father, mother, hometown. Father, blue eyes, Marine Corps uniform, playing a harmonica. He held me aloft so high I could have touched the ceiling. Mother, perfect nails, Elizabeth Taylor hair, red and white striped dress, impeccable. Hometown, streets, trees, streams, the Ohio seasons. I learned everything I needed to know from the 3 of you. My mother was from Summit Lake. Her dad, Jack Roberts, was an Akron cop. Her mother, Irene, a seamstress, played piano in the church, Margaret Park Presbyterian. It was to her house on Hillcrest Street where they took me from People's Hospital that day in September 1951. Summit Lake was Akron's Coney Island, the place for boats and rides and summer pastimes, and that's where Bud and Dolores started seeing each other. They were bound to meet because his sister Ruth had married her brother Gene. In later years, my dad spent many hours researching the Hynde family tree. He even trawled through the family records in Edinburgh's town hall after I married a Scotsman. Yes, there's my dad wearing a fishing hat, Bermuda shorts, and hush puppies wandering the cobbled streets, always looking up. Scotland, home of golf, as said on the tea towel I gave him that he displayed above his workbench in the garage where he crafted his own golf clubs, listening to the police band on his radio. "Oh, Bud, why are you listening to that?" my mother critical of any hillbillyish behavior. "Now, Christie, do your neighbors know you're Scots?" he asked loudly every time he came to London. "They don't care, Dad. They're Greek." The family heritage fad for families started in the 70s. Before that, if you weren't part of an ethnic minority like African, Italian, or Jewish, you were simply American. There were no Hispanics or Asians around, not up north. We looked and sounded like characters in cowboy shows on TV. Have Gun Will Travel, Tombstone Territory, The Riflemen. I knew all the theme songs. White Europeans. We owned the joint. I must have been 15 before it occurred to me to ask where the Hyndes came from, and the Craigs and the Roberts and the Joneses. According to my father, they, as in we, had come from Scotland via Nova Scotia. His theory? Now, Hynde was originally spelled Hynd. The E was added as a flourish. Most of his sentences began with now. I think the flourish referred to the fluid style of script they wrote in back then. I must have heard him say that 50 times. The E was added as a flourish. My mother's people were from Caerphilly and must have found jobs in the coal mines of southern Ohio as Welsh coal miners would have. Wales? Where the heck is that? Is that a country? I asked. Her mother, Irene, had been adopted along with her brother and sisters, Edna, Glovina, and Louis. I never knew why. I forgot to ask my mother when I had the chance. My maternal grandparents, the cop and the seamstress, divorced. I never asked about that either. It was uncommon to divorce back then. My mother wouldn't have talked about it anyway. There's a lot I never knew, I suppose, like with every family. Before she married, she went to New York City to work as a model. I never appreciated how bold that was for a girl back then. It was the land of opportunity, but people like mine didn't get very many back then. Now I see that's where her sense of glamour came from. Always ultra-modern. Then she became the wife and mother she was born to be, like every woman in her community. When I was 8, she went back to work as a secretary, but she always made dinner and did the housework. I wasn't allowed to come to the table in bare feet. She ran a tight ship. Grandma Roberts was living with us when she died. She moved in with us on Stabler Road, leaving the little apartment in North Hill where she'd been on her own since the Hillcrest days. I was 10 when she had a heart attack at the dinner table. An ambulance came and took her away, and we never saw her again. The thing that shocked me most was my mother saying, "Oh, God, oh, God." I'd never heard her talk like that before. Was that swearing? No, it couldn't have been. We weren't allowed to swear. My Grandma Hynde was the last of her generation. She spent the end of her days in an old people's home playing bingo. We always went to her house in Talmadge for Easter and would spend the day with Aunt Ruth and Uncle Gene and our double cousins, Dave, Dick, and Mary Ann, all 5 of us sharing both sets of grandparents. No, that wasn't a hillbilly thing, not if my mother had anything to do with it. Grandma Hynde listened to the baseball game on the radio and did crossword puzzles as good as anyone. By then, Americans were starting a new trend, not to have aging parents live in the family home. It wasn't the modern way. My brother Terry played clarinet. Kids in the neighborhood called him Benny after Benny Goodman. Then he moved on to the sax and became as fine a sax player as I've ever heard. He was the musician of the family, not me. And the only time I ever saw Terry starstruck was when I introduced him to Nena Cherry. Her dad's Don Cherry. Terry could hardly speak. I had no concept of life beyond Akron's leafy borders. The warehouses, factories, valleys, and streams and woodlands with their dramatic transformations. For all I knew, every town had red brick roads and every 4th house was painted blue. That's when Akron was the center of the universe.